Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com, and today we're going to take a look at a fun little engine. This is the latest 3-rail O-scale Canadian National 10-wheeler from Lionel. Alright, so hey, look at that. The scenery has changed in between shots. You know, these review videos sometimes take a week or two to film, and sometimes in between shots I will do some scenery work on the layout, and that's what I did here. So in between the last shot and this shot, I added a grade crossing across these tracks. But anyway, we've got a great little engine here that was a happy surprise because originally I did not order one of these when they were offered in Lionel's 2015 Volume 1 catalog. And the reason I didn't order one was because they really didn't look that exciting. They didn't have a whistle steam smoke effect or anything like that. And so I figured I would pass on them. But then a few weeks ago I was over at Legacy Station and they happened to have some of these in stock, and so I took one out of the box to check it out, and I found that I really liked it. It has a great whistle, which you'll hear later on in this video, and it's a great little runner, and so I kind of fell in love with it, and so I decided to bring one home, and so that's what we've got here. And you know, that's the fun thing about this hobby. Sometimes you plan on getting certain engines, and other times you just get surprised by something after the fact. And that's the case with this engine. It's not the most detailed model in the world. It's just a good, solid little engine with some great sound effects and a great size. I really like small steam engines, as I've said before. And that's because it's easy to get big steam engines, but you don't often find small steam engines that are nicely detailed and have great sounds. And this is one of those, and so I'm really glad I picked one up. So anyway, what we're going to do is talk about the history of the 10-wheeler for just a couple minutes, and then we'll go into the Lionel rendition, and then after that we'll run the engine around the layout for a few minutes. So, the 10-wheeler, as it's called, is technically a 460 steam locomotive, and of course that means that it has 4 wheels on the lead truck, 6 drive wheels, and then no wheels on the trailing truck, so that's why there's a 0 on the end. But rather than being called 460s, they were typically called 10-wheelers because of course they have 10 wheels. The 460 wheel arrangement was used all around the world, but the first 460 10-wheeler in the United States was built in 1847 for the Reading Railroad. Now, in the United States, and I'm guessing Canada as well, the 460 began to replace the popular American-type locomotives, which of course had a 440 wheel arrangement. And this happened because railroads were looking for engines with more traction. The 460 locomotives proved to be very popular, and they were really some of the best general-purpose locomotives of their day, and really some of the most common engines found on American railroads. In total, over 17,000 460s were built, and they were used for both fast freight and passenger service. The use of the 10-wheelers on American railroads peaked right around the beginning of the 20th century, but with the introduction of steel cars and the railroad's ever-growing need to run bigger and faster trains, the presence of the 460s began to fade on main lines as different wheel arrangements gained popularity. So the 462s took over for passenger trains, and wheel arrangements like 280s and 282s became popular for freight trains. Now, although the 460s were on the way out, they did not go quietly. They remained in service with many railroads across the US and Canada for many years to do work on branch lines, secondary passenger trains, as well as local freight. The Canadian Pacific maintained a fleet of 10-wheelers well into the 1950s, so they were still in widespread use even as diesel was starting to take over. All totaled, the 460 10-wheelers saw service on American railroads for over 100 years. Alright, so let's go over some stats and facts on Lionel's rendition of the 10-wheeler. As I said, Lionel offered this engine in their 2015 Volume 1 catalog, and then they started shipping in mid-2015, right around June or July. Now, I bought the Canadian National version, but there are lots of other road names to choose from. They've got a Chicago and Northwestern, a Frisco, a Northern Pacific, a Southern Pacific, a New York Central, a New Haven, and an Atlantic Coastline. But keep in mind that no matter which road name you order, they are all the same on the inside, so everything you see on this video applies to any of the road names. So the length of the engine itself is right at 10 3/4 inches. The length of the tender is about 7.5 inches, and the combined length of the engine and the tender is right at 19 inches. The weight of the engine is 4 pounds 13 ounces. The tender weighs 2 pounds 10 ounces, so that gives us a total weight of 7 pounds 7 ounces. This engine has 1 pound 12 ounces of pulling power, which is pretty good, and the minimum curve needed to operate this engine is 0.31. On the inside, the engine is powered by one large flywheel motor. There's a fan-driven smoke unit up in the front for the smokestack. There are lots of operating lights, which I'll show you later in this review. And then back in the tender are the electronics for legacy control and legacy rail sounds. There are 3 ways to operate this engine. The preferred method, of course, is to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of the engine's advanced features. However, you can also run the engine with Lionel's classic TMCC command system, or you can run the engine conventionally with just a transformer and some track. There's lots of nice stuff to see and talk about on this engine, so now let's go in for a closer look. Alright, so here's a look at the pilot area. You can see we've got a nice little cow catcher grill down here. There's a moving coupler cut bar with a chain that goes down into a dummy scale coupler. And of course, if you want to double head the engine, you can swap that dummy scale coupler out for a dummy O-gauge coupler that's also packaged with the engine. And then above all that, we've got this little deck here that does have safety tread on it. Here's a look at one of the 2 cylinders, and then you can see the beginning of the drive gear, and then there we have the drive wheels and the rest of the drive gear, and as you can see, it looks great, and it looks better when the engine is in motion. You'll see that in just a few minutes. Toward the back of the engine, we've got the firebox, which looks pretty good. They've got some nice rivet detail going on here. And then the rest of the detailing under the cab here is fairly basic. Most of the pipes and so forth are cast in. It's not the best job I've ever seen, but it looks pretty good. Moving on up, here's a look at the front of the boiler. Again, nothing super fancy, but it's pretty nice. We've got a separately applied metal grab iron going around the bottom. We've got some nice rivet detailing. There's an operating headlight in the middle, a number board here, lighted number boards on the side, operating marker lights up on top, and then of course the front of the boiler opens up like that. As we start to move down the side of the boiler, you can see the start of one of 2 handrails that run down the entire length of the boiler. And then right here we've got a legible builder's plate. Since this is a Canadian National version, the builder's plate does say Montreal Locomotive Works, and you can see it has a build date of 1914. Looking down the rest of the boiler, the detailing is sparse, but it looks pretty good. We've got some cast-in steps here, some additional cast-in detailing down here. The walkways up here are smooth. There's no safety tread. We've got some separately applied detailing here, and then of course we've got that handrail going down the side of the boiler. On the outside of the cab, we've got those little triangle windows up here in the front, and there are some on the other side as well. And then we've got a nice little red window here with clear plastic inserts. There's an open window here. On the inside of the cab, there are 2 hand-painted crew figures. There is a nicely detailed backhead. There's a red glow in the firebox when the engine is in operation. There's also a light in the cab, and that light does turn off when the engine starts moving. Here's a quick look down the other side of the boiler. It looks essentially the same as the side you've already seen, but we do have this extra equipment right here. Up on top there is a smokestack, and there is a fan-driven smoke unit down in there. And of course, to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. And then behind that, we've got a nice sand dome. Moving back, we've got a nice little swinging bell. There it is. Then we've got a steam dome, and then we've got some nice hand-painted pop-off valves, as well as a whistle. And then there's a little dynamo unit right here. The roof of the cab is pretty plain looking. There are 2 vents up here, but they do not open. They are cast in. Here's a look at the back of the engine. Down here is the drawbar, and sitting up on top is the infrared sensor that allows the electronics in the engine to communicate with the electronics in the tender. Up here we've got some separately applied metal grab irons on either side. There are 2 windows back here. These windows do not have clear plastic inserts in them. And then we've got the interior of the cab, which hopefully you can see a little bit better from this angle. Here's a look at the underside of the engine. There are 3 pickup rollers here in the middle. There are 2 traction tires on the front set of drivers, which is a little unusual. Normally they're on the back set of drivers. And then there are 3 control switches on the underside here. There's the smoke unit on-off switch, and then on the other side is the Odyssey speed control switch and the run program switch. Alright, so that takes care of the engine. Now let's take a look at the tender. So on the side here you can see the die-cast metal trucks with the nice side frames. We've got some nice rivet detailing here on the side, steps here on the corners, some separately applied grab irons on each corner, and then of course we've got that nice crisp Canadian National logo. Here's a look at the front of the tender. Again, nothing super fancy. Most of the detailing here is cast in. And then down on the drawbar, we've got the second infrared sensor that allows the electronics in the tender to communicate with the electronics in the engine. And here's the back of the tender. Again, basic is the key word. There's nothing super fancy here. We've got the electrocoupler down here that can be thrown from the Legacy or TMCC remote. We've got some nice cast-in details, some legible signage, and a nice add-on metal ladder. Here's the top of the tender. We've got a real coal load up front. There's a separately applied handrail going around the back here, and then the rest of the detailing is cast in, including this hatch. Finally, here's a look at the underside of the tender. There are 2 pickup rollers, 1 per truck. The speaker for the sound system is right here under the rear truck. The master volume control for the engine is right here. And then here in the middle is the infrared sensor for the Lionel LCS sensor track if you choose to use one. Alright, the last thing we're going to do before we start this engine up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. Well, best feature this time around was an easy pick. It's the whistle. I love the whistle on this engine. In fact, it's part of the reason why I bought the engine in the first place. It sounds amazing. Now, whether or not it's prototypical, I couldn't tell you, but it sounds great, and I love using the quilling whistle on this engine, and you'll hear it in just a minute. So yeah, best feature this time around is the whistle. The only thing that would make it better is if it was a smoking whistle. Okay, let's go ahead and start her up. Now, I'm going to use the extended startup sequence, which makes use of some of the crew talk sounds. If you don't care for crew talk sounds, that's okay. You can start the engine up without them.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy?
Copy that, dispatcher. I read you. Over.
Okay, start her up. Stand by for track orders.
Thanks, dispatcher. We're ready to move.
Okay, first up, let's check out the whistle. Now let's check out the bell. Here's the cylinder steam sound. And here's the sound of water being added to the tender. They've also got a sound effect for coal being added to the tender, and that is activated by pressing and holding the reset button on the Legacy remote. Now here's the part that so many of you love because it is by far the most prototypical function of this engine, and that is the Crew Talk sound effects. So let's give them a try.
This is the dispatcher. Stand by. Over.
Copy that. Let me know when I can depart. Out.
Dispatcher here. You're clear to pull. Over.
That's great. I'm taking the signal. Out. Tower, stopped and ready to cut off. Over.
Affirmative. Welcome back. Out.
Dispatcher, you got any more blocks for us? Over.
Yep. You have a clear track. Over.
Thank you, sir.
Dispatcher here. All clear inbound. Over.
That's great. All clear inbound. Out.
Dispatcher here. Come to a full stop. Over.
Copy that. Full stop. Out.
And by the way, in case you didn't realize it, I was just kidding. I know the Crew Talk sounds are not that prototypical, and I know a lot of you guys complain about it, and so that's why I'm kind of kidding around about it. If you don't like them, that's fine. You don't have to use them. Okay, we're ready to roll it out. Now, unfortunately, at this time, I do not have a whole lot of Canadian National Steam era rolling stock. That's something that I have to remedy in the future. So the rolling stock you're going to see with this engine today is just a mix of different road names. Anyway, let's go ahead and roll it out.
Dispatcher, here we go. Over.
Acknowledged. Keep it rolling. Out.
kicker. We're going to check it out. I'll let you know when we're rolling again. Out. We're going to sign the register book. We're all done. Out.
Okay, that about wraps it up for this review. This is a great little engine, and like I said, it may not be the most detailed or prototypically accurate model in the world, but it sure is a lot of fun. And for those of you who may not have super wide curves on your layout that allow you to run large steam engines, here's a chance to run a really nice steam engine that can negotiate those tighter curves that you have on smaller layouts. And like I said earlier, they offer this engine in a variety of different road names, so chances are there's something to fit your need. Now, if you're interested in purchasing one of these, the retail price is right at $900, but keep in mind that is retail. If you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a decent discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. To discuss this model or any other O-Gauge trains and to meet other O-Gauge modelers, check out the O-Gauge Railroading Magazine online forum at ogrforum.ogaugerr.com.